Hey, good day to you all. It's Patrick Lovell, truth bombing on March 12th, which is Sunday, 2023 at approximately 1:15 p.m. my time, on this great Spring Forward Day, which is an opportunity to spring forward into this message that I'll keep abbreviated to hopefully compel you to join me and hopefully many, many, many others to the tune of millions upon millions of others to create a tidal wave populist movement crusade to purge corruption. Look around today, look around every day. It's going to be same second verse, same as the first. You'll almost feel like Groundhog Day as you watch and continue to watch our country collapse. It's unbelievable. The stuff that we've seen recently from Tucker Carlson on Fox, which is just a litany of lies that are really baked in for the most incredibly gullible, naive people on the face of the planet that aren't apparently aware that Tucker got hand did handed the footage of the congressional footage from the Speaker of the House of Congress, which is insane corruption first and foremost. But second of all, he just cherry picked this information. I'm a producer and I sit in the edit booth all the time to basically tell and ferment a story. And his story is that a bunch of basically placid people showed up to the Capitol to protest because they believed in the system and they thought that the election was stolen, and it's absolutely insanity. How many of us didn't see all of the other information, not to mention the stuff that's been revealed that led to the likes of the insurrectionists proclaiming that they wanted to hang on the spot former Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi as well as former Vice President Mike Pence, among other things, not to mention, the death of a police officer and all of the other tragedy that befell that scenario. And but most importantly, in the thing that I continue to go back to over and over and over, is that this whole thing was promulgated on what they Trump wing created and concocted, which has been since blamed on Trump as the mastermind of the big lie. I'm pretty convinced that that whole orchestration came from their knowledge of the efforts that I've actually put forth in the con, which we've, advertised and marketed as, the big lie, but predicated on the real lie and the real coup d'etat that took place in 2009 as a result of our financial system setting up tens of millions of people in the rest of the globe, and then basically I think the term is, created a face plant for everybody else. I can't remember what the term is today that everybody seems to be using in terms of the big setup, especially in crypto. But that ultimately led to trillions of dollars of derivatives blowing up the world economy. And then when the whole thing in the House of Cards fell, that a couple of things happened simultaneously to save the denizens of a disaster that betrayed all of us. And what that was what I continue to tell you, which is the ultimate truth, the truth, the mother lode of them all, the nuclear truth that reveals the largest criminal conspiracy and cover up and corruption in the history of the world that never ended. It all spans from Federal Reserve Act 13.3 being used illegally, which was baked into the statutes of the Federal Reserve to be the lender of last resort to the economy in the case of emergencies. But nowhere in the statute does it say that that emergency prowess can be used and operated to backstop a criminal syndicate, which it was. And you don't know that, and the rest of the nation doesn't know that, and the rest of the world doesn't know that because we buried it, because our media buried it, because our media is in on it, and our media is tacitly involved, maybe directly involved, in propaganda, which of course lays out to, to Tucker Carlson and his fucking stupidity in everything, manner, shape, or form of just the beguiling nature of the fact that this guy, through these revelations of the Dominion subpoenas that showed that this guy has absolute disdain for his audience, but he wants to give them what they want anyway, and he hates the president, or hated then President Donald Trump, detested him, thought that he was about to get what he deserved, but is playing ball. I mean, this mental gymnastics, this insanity is what happens when you have corruption, because corruption births fascism. That's just one example of it, but it's a big example because of none other than, a guy that I admired in a very big way, and I still think I want to drive a Tesla someday when things come together. But Elon Musk is shocking me. Yesterday morning, he was out there supporting Tucker Carlson in this initiative, which makes me think that this guy is not what I thought he was. I mean, I thought he was a genius, but Geniuses don't do that. unless there's something else going on that I'm not aware of, which I believe there is. And so, for example, and I mentioned this on Twitter yesterday, but look, I'm in contact with one of the most important people on the planet, as far as I'm concerned, very recognized around the world. And I got a message from him yesterday that he apologized for not being in touch with me to help elevate a lot of the stuff that I'm telling you, because he got jumped by fascists. And it was in the hospital in the emergency room with a broken nose and I believe maybe a broken jaw. I'm not quite sure. I don't know what all the details are. But, to me, when I heard that and I put it all together on top of what's happening with the congressional hearings, with the Twitter files and everything else, and I know history and I know how incredibly organized right-wing militia, billionaires, and this right movement can be and seemingly are. And I think that what I just mentioned to you is another I think revelation that this movement is far down the field. It has a lot of this stuff planned in advance, and what's going to be the outcome? Well, like I say over and over, corruption births fascism. I'm obsessed, know a lot, probably an expert in all things the Third Reich and Adolf Hitler, and I know exactly what took place at that time period and what it led to. And we're playing with fire now. We're really playing with fire. And this has been going on now, I think, for at least, we're talking about like 8 to 10 years, which is all causality in the aftermath of the great financial crisis, in which a corrupt financial system set up the world through deceptive acts and practices, destroyed everything, including the law, and then backdoored their way to trillions upon trillions of dollars using the full faith and credit of the United States to guarantee corruption. This is unacceptable. Nobody's going to tell you this in mainstream media. Nobody's going to tell you this in Congress. Nobody has told us in Congress. The closest that we've seen from an elected official was the presidential run of Bernie Sanders in 2016 when he proclaimed that Wall Street's business model is fraud. Unfortunately, Uncle Bernie never told us the details of who did what, when, and how this whole thing operates, which is exactly what I've done. I've dedicated my life to it. I've spent years and years and millions of dollars of getting the highest level of this information, and it has fallen on deaf ears because I think we have been suppressed or canceled or some measure therein of what the right's saying in terms of how intelligence can work hand in hand with technology and basically make sure that people like me aren't hurt. Everything else about that whole bullshit that was happening in the circus of the congressional hearings the other day was just a joke. I mean, there wasn't really any discussion about the sanctity and the purity of free speech as a First Amendment, although you can see it on the front page of the New York Times today, basically telling us, for example, that the Dominion lawsuit against Fox may not actually provide more material once it goes to trial of revelations through subpoenas of things that happen to come out in the open based on the stuff that Fox knew and did and were involved with. And I keep thinking to myself, wait a second, this is the nation's biggest newspaper of record with incredible resources, who's incumbent upon them, as they did during the Vietnam Papers and all of the things that led to the impeachment of the impeachment of Nixon and so forth, where there was actual investigative journalism. Why would the New York Times be waiting for, example, discovery from a Dominion lawsuit? They're the ones with the resources. They're the ones who could actually pull the trigger on this whole thing and reveal everything, but they haven't. Why? Maybe they don't want to be a target of other lawsuits themselves. Who knows, right? But the bottom line is it's just another example of how media is a complete failure. And there is no truth. There is just more and more lies. And like Jon Snow said in, basically the epic sort of run to, the battle of the darkness was that when the world, tells nothing but lies, all you get is better and better lies. That's why he wouldn't lie. And that's where I'm coming from. Look, I have got the truth. I've got the truth that can take this whole thing down. And I am trying to lead a populist movement that creates a national catharsis and maybe a global catharsis, but a global or a national movement at least to elevate the truth, tidal wave of truth to purge corruption. Because if you, the people, have the facts of who did what, when, and how, and you understand all of this system is literally built to play you. They're playing you and us as the sucker, and they're getting away with it. And if you find yourself like, struggling and maybe about to go over the edge and everything else, I'm not talking to the 1% who benefit from this system. And not all the 1% are bad. It's really the 0.001% that are puppeteering this entire system that has deceived all of us. And you do not live in a democracy. The integrity of law is no longer, and it hasn't been for at least 13 years. That's why I'm leading this populist movement, and I'm asking you to contribute $13 in honor, quite frankly, of the original 13 colonies that came together to purge the tyranny of King George III and the Redcoats, and of course the East India Trading Company, right? And by doing so, they created, in order to form a more perfect union through the Bill of Rights and separation of powers. And I know there's so many of you out there that are jaded and cynical and like, yeah, but there was a lot of problems. Of course there were. Whatever, guys. This battle between good and evil, darkness and the light, is time immemorial, and it's our turn, and we have to step up now. I'm making the you got to step up. You got to. I'm not looking for people who are whiners. I'm not looking for cowards. I'm not looking for people that expect somebody else to come save the day. We've got to come together to save ourselves. I'm looking for patriots. Thomas Jefferson said that the tree of liberty has to be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and the blood of tyrants. Now, I'm not promulgating a bloody revolution and the reign of terror like the French Revolution, even though I certainly understand how all of that came to be. I think there's still time to elevate what it is that has to happen to save ourselves and to create a reboot and a renaissance and enlightenment that could basically take us to the next steps and basically create a sustainable world for ourselves and our children and our grandchildren by getting this right now. And we have to do that because ultimately it's the forest through the trees. It's the whole scenario with the emperor's new clothes. You cannot understand the corruption unless you wrap your mind around the corruption. So what you would be donating to is what I'm calling a barnstorming sort of what's the term that I'm trying to think of when you had back in the day when they had the oh God, I'm sorry, I can't even think of the title of the shit. Where you would have revival. That's what I'm trying to think of. The revival of the American dream. I hate to use these like biblical terms, but I mean, come on, man. We got to come together. We've got to come together to foment a revolution against tyranny, a revolution against deception, a revolution against thievery and diabolical fuckers like Donald Trump. I mean, my God, this guy could literally become a significant problem if the DOJ doesn't take him down now. And they're not going to take him down now if the best they can do, quite frankly, is hush money payments to a porn star, considering everything he's been up to his eyeballs in. They're getting gun shy because of all the stuff that's going on with what Fox is being able to showcase is they can move tens of millions of people through lies. Guess who else lied? Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler ended up doing some of the same things. That's what they're emulating right now. That's what fascists do, man. They use the patriarchy or this hierarchy and they punch sideways and down so they can have the control. But what you don't understand is the elixir of this financialization that's created the corruption that's birthing fascism. And so that's why we've got to have a revival movement of this barnstorming tour where we take the message to show what the United States is supposed to be, what it has been, what it's not, and what it could be in a way that hopefully brings millions of people together, not online. So you can like, oh, who's calling me? What do I see? Oh, I'm in the mood to watch some porn or whatever the fuck you might be involved with that day while your country is absolutely collapsing. So for those of you who aren't cowards, for those of you who aren't pathetic, for those of you who don't have your head in the sand, for those of you who aren't looking for some miracle of God to save you, join me. I'm not Moses. I don't part the Red Sea. I'm not Jesus. I don't walk on the water. I'm just a dude committed to liberty and justice for all. And if you join me, I promise you we will win. I'll borrow a phrase from Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill said, courage is rightly esteemed the first of human qualities because, as it has been said, it is the quality which guarantees all others. Regardless of what you think about Winston Churchill, That is what you have to put first and foremost in your consciousness. Courage. If you didn't spend $100 million in the last billion-dollar presidential campaign to have this system working for you, you're shit out of luck. I'm asking you to invest $13 into a revolution of your soul to save the world, the planet, and everything else to move forward so that we can actually defeat tyranny once again, which is now it's up to us. Every generation's got to fight this fight. Join me. Onwards and upwards.